The massive silhouette of the HSS Leviathan cut through the nebulous swirling gases like a knife, its hull gleaming despite centuries of disuse. The supercarrier, once the pride of humanity's fleet and believed destroyed in the final battle of the Arcturus campaign, had returned to normal space. Radiation scarring marked its titanium alloy exterior, but the ship's profile remained unmistakable. 2 kilometers of concentrated human military might that had suddenly reappeared where nothing had existed moments before. On the bridge, Commander Ju Park gripped the arms of his command chair as emergency systems blared around him. The dimensional transition had been rougher than expected. Red warning lights bathed the faces of his skeleton crew in an eerie glow as they worked to stabilize the ship's systems. "Status report," Ju ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Hannah Kim looked up from her console, dark circles visible under her eyes. Like everyone aboard, she had aged only 5 years, since the Leviathan had vanished from normal space, though according to their instruments, centuries had passed in the outside universe. "Main power at 40% and climbing," Hannah reported. "Life support stable in occupied sections. Navigation is coming back online now." Across the bridge, Chief Engineer Do-Yum Lee shook his head in disbelief as data streamed across his screens. "Sir, according to stellar positioning, we've been gone for over 300 years." A heavy silence fell over the bridge crew, 200 souls who had survived when the Leviathan was caught in the dimensional rift during their desperate last stand against enemy forces. What they had experienced as 5 years of emergency repairs and ration supplies in a pocket dimension had been centuries for the rest of humanity. "Any response to our automated identification beacon?" Ju asked. Communications Officer Sunmi Kang frowned at her console. "Nothing on standard military channels. I'm scanning all frequencies, but..." She paused, adjusting her headset. "Wait. I'm picking up transmissions, but they're not in any encryption format I recognize." Ju stood and moved to the main viewport. The swirling gases of the nebula limited visibility, but the stars beyond were unfamiliar configurations. "Where are we?" "Carina Sector," the navigation officer responded. "Approximately 60 light-years from Earth." Ju nodded grimly. "Broadcast on all emergency frequencies. Let Earth Command know we've returned." The hours that followed brought only more questions. Earth Command never responded. Instead, the communications array picked up thousands of signals in dozens of languages, most of them non-human. The data they gathered painted an unsettling picture. Humanity was barely mentioned in current galactic news, and when it was, it appeared to be as a historical footnote. "Sir," Hannah called from her station, "I've compiled what we know. It appears a political entity called the Galactic Concord now controls most of known space. It's an alliance of 17 major species and dozens of minor ones." "And humans?" Ju asked, already suspecting the answer from the crew's somber expressions. "Either extinct or reduced to pre-spaceflight technology," Hannah replied quietly. "Different sources say different things, but none list humans as a current spacefaring civilization." The revelation struck each crew member differently. Some stood in shocked silence. Others whispered quiet prayers. A few shed tears for families long turned to dust. Ju allowed them their moment before speaking again. "We need more information before we decide our next move. Maintain minimal power signatures and continue passive scanning." But their presence had not gone unnoticed. 3 days after their emergence, sensors detected an approaching vessel. "Configuration unknown," Do-Yun reported. "Organic design elements suggest Midorian construction, but the technology appears more advanced than anything in our records." On the main screen, the approaching ship resembled a purple-tinged manta ray, gliding through space with graceful undulations of its hull. Light pulsed along its flanks in patterns that suggested communication. "They're scanning us," Hannah warned. "Very thorough scans. They're trying to penetrate our hull shielding." Ju straightened his uniform, faded and patched after 5 years of use. "Open a channel. Audio only." Before Sumi could comply, the ship's AI interface activated unexpectedly. "Commander, I've analyzed their scan patterns. This is a scientific research vessel, not a military craft." "Thank you." At last, Ju acknowledged. The AI had been damaged during their dimensional imprisonment, but had recently shown signs of recovery. All the more reason to establish contact peacefully. The alien response came not as words, but as a series of mathematical equations projected directly onto their communications display, a universal language offering peaceful contact. Sumney quickly formulated a response using similar mathematical principles. Within minutes, the alien ship transmitted language packets that Atlas quickly processed into translatable form. "We are Science Vessel Harmony's question of the Galactic Concord," came the translated message. "Identify yourselves and your purpose in this restricted zone." Ju took a deep breath. "This is Commander Ju Park of the Human Systems ship Leviathan. We have emerged from a dimensional anomaly and request information and assistance." The silence that followed stretched uncomfortably long. "They've stopped all movement," Do-hyun observed. "And their energy signature just spiked. They might be powering weapons." "No," Sumi countered. "They're transmitting massive data bursts. Not to us, but outward, to multiple destinations." Another message arrived. "Remain in position. To not activate propulsion or weapon systems. Authenticating historical records." Hours passed before the science vessel communicated again, this time with a single brief statement. "Maintain position. Diplomatic representatives approaching. Estimated arrival. 14 standard cycles." What they couldn't know, was the panic spreading through the Galactic Concord. Long-range communications raced between worlds as ancient contingency protocols were activated. In the Concord's highest chambers, leaders gathered in emergency session to address a nightmare none had believed possible: the return of human military technology. The HSS Leviathan, the last great warship of humanity, once believed destroyed, had reappeared. And with it came the terrifying possibility that humans, a species the Concorde had carefully written out of galactic history, might reclaim their place among the stars. As the diplomatic vessel approached, Ju gathered his senior officers. "Whatever happens next will determine the future of humanity. We may be all that's left. Remember your oaths to protect human civilization." He paused, looking at each tired face. "Even if that civilization no longer exists as we knew it." The Hess Leviathan drifted silently through the darkness of space, approaching the small human colony on Proxima Centauri b. After 2 weeks of careful negotiations with the Concorde diplomatic vessel, Commander Ju had made a decision. Rather than surrender his ship to alien authorities, he would seek out whatever remained of humanity. Approaching orbital insertion, Lieutenant Hannah announced, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. "Colony in visual range." On the main view screen, a collection of dome structures appeared, nestled in a valley surrounded by Proxima Centauri b's distinctive red-tinged mountains. Atmospheric processors created a hazy bubble over the settlement, their exhaust plumes visible even from orbit. "Any response to our hails?" Ju asked, straightening his uniform jacket. Communications Officer Sumi shook her head. "They're receiving, sir, but not responding. I'm detecting increased power readings from their defense grid, though it's remarkably primitive by our standards." "They're afraid," Security Chief Do-hyun observed. "From their perspective, a massive warship just appeared in their skies without warning." Ju nodded. "Prepare a shuttle. I'll lead the landing party myself." "Sir," Do-hyun protested, "protocol dictates." "Protocol was written for a military that no longer exists." Ju interrupted gently. "These people are human. They deserve to hear from me directly." The shuttle descended through wispy clouds, carrying Ju, Do-hyun, and 3 security officers. As they approached the landing pad, they could see a welcome committee had assembled. Though welcome might have been generous. 24 guards formed a protective line, their weapons outdated but still lethal. The shuttle settled onto the pad with a gentle hiss. Before the ramp had fully extended, Ju stepped out, hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. A woman stepped forward from among the colonists. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back tightly, and her weathered face carried the signs of someone who had faced countless challenges. Despite her age, she stood perfectly straight, projecting authority. "I am Governor Taeyeon Park," she announced, her voice carrying across the landing pad. "Identify yourselves and your purpose here." Ju bowed slightly, a gesture of respect rather than submission. "I am Commander Ju Park of the HSS Leviathan. We've been displaced in time." Murmurs ran through the gathered colonists. Governor Taeyeon's eyes narrowed. "The Leviathan was destroyed in the last stand at Arcturus," she said, disbelief evident in her voice. "That was 300 years ago." "For you, perhaps," Ju replied. "For us, it has been only 5 years since we were caught in a dimensional rift during that battle. Time passed differently where we were trapped." Taeyeon studied him for a long moment, then glanced at the shuttle and the visible patches and repairs on their uniforms. "If you truly are from the Leviathan," she said carefully, "you would know the final transmission sent by Admiral Kang before the ship was lost." Without hesitation, Ju recited, "Even in darkness, humanity's light endures. Arcturus will not be our end." The effect was immediate. Taeyeon's stern expression cracked, revealing momentary shock before she regained her composure. "Lower your weapons," she ordered her guards. Then, to Ju, "We have much to discuss, Commander." Within hours, news of the Leviathan's return spread through the colony. Children pressed their faces against windows to glimpse the legendary soldiers of humanity's golden age, while adults gathered in small groups, whispering about what this might mean for their future. In the governor's modest quarters, Ju sat across from Taeyeon as she poured a dark liquid into 2 cups. "We ferment it from local plants," she explained, pushing a cup toward him. "Not quite coffee, but it serves the purpose." Ju took a cautious sip, hiding his grimace. "Thank you for your hospitality. I know our arrival must be unsettling." Taeyeon's laugh was without humor. "Unsettling is a mild word, Commander. You represent a past that has become legend. The Leviathan was the pride of humanity's fleet, the ship that was supposed to save us all." "What happened after we disappeared?" Ju asked quietly. Taeyeon's eyes grew distant. "Without the Leviathan, the defense of Arcturus collapsed. Earth's outer colonies fell one by one. The homeworld held out for another decade before the Vexari Alliance breached Sol's defenses." She paused, taking a long drink. "Those who could flee did. Colony ships scattered in all directions, carrying whatever technology they could salvage. My ancestors ended up here, hiding from the victors who became what is now the Galactic Concord." "And Earth?" Ju asked, dreading the answer. "Officially, we don't know," Taeyeon replied. "The Concord claims humanity has regressed to pre-spaceflight civilization, with most of our technological achievements lost. Unofficially," she lowered her voice, "there are rumors that Earth remains under quarantine, its people subject to genetic monitoring to prevent them from advancing beyond approved levels." Juwoo's hand tightened around his cup. "And your colony? How have you managed to survive?" "We're a client species to the Vexari," Taeyeon said, a bitter edge to her voice. "We provide labor and resources in exchange for protection. Most colonies like ours exist in similar arrangements with various Concord species." "Slavery," Doyeon muttered from his position near the door. "We prefer to think of it as survival," Taeyeon countered. "Until now, we've had few alternatives." Before Juwoo could respond, a young aide rushed into the room. "Governor, we're detecting an unscheduled ship entering the system. It bears Concord markings." Taeyeon rose quickly, moving to a small console in the corner of the room. They weren't due for another month. A sleek vessel appeared on the screen, its design elegant and predatory at the same time. The insignia of the Galactic Concord, a spiral pattern of 17 stars, was clearly visible on its hull. They'll want your ship, Taeyun warned, turning to Juwu. To them, the Leviathan is both a miracle and a threat. Juwu nodded grimly. Can you tell us anything about their capabilities? Their technology has advanced since your time, Taeyun explained. Energy weapons, sophisticated shields, faster than light communications. But from what I remember of old war records, the Leviathan was special. It was, Juwu confirmed. Is there somewhere secure where we can speak? There are things about my ship that were classified even in my time. As they moved to a shielded conference room, colony citizens lined the corridors, watching the crew of the Leviathan, with expressions ranging from hope to fear. One small boy broke from his mother's grasp and approached Do-Yun. Are you really from the old fleet? The child asked, eyes wide. Do-Yun knelt down, his usually stern face softening. Yes, we are. My grandma says the old fleet will come back someday and free us, the boy said, voice filled with wonder. Are you here to free us? Before Do-Yun could answer, the boy's mother rushed forward, scooping him up with an apologetic glance at the security chief. As they continued walking, Juwu leaned close to Taeyun. What did he mean by freed us? Taeyun's expression hardened. Hope is a dangerous thing, Commander. But perhaps it's time we remembered what it feels like. The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord gleamed with polished stone and flowing water features, designed to accommodate 17 different species in relative comfort. At the center stood Ambassador Minho-song, the lone human representative. For years, he had played his role perfectly, the quiet, deferential spokesman for a broken species. Today was different. After centuries of serving as your client species, he addressed the Concord Council with unprecedented firmness. Humanity requests recognition of the Leviathan as sovereign territory under human command. His words caused an immediate stir among the gathered delegates. The Alkari representatives fluttered their wing membranes in agitation, while the gelatinous Mercian delegates pulsed rapidly with bright colors. The Vexari delegate rose to his full height, scaled skin catching the light as he moved forward. His forked tongue flicked out briefly before he spoke. The vessel represents military technology prohibited by Concord Treaty, he hissed, voice carrying an unmistakable note of disdain. It must be surrendered for decommissioning. Minho stood his ground. The Leviathan predates any treaty between humans and the Concord. Its crew has not agreed to any terms imposed after their temporal displacement. This is not a negotiation, the Vexari delegate insisted. The recovery of pre-Concord military technology falls under Section 12 of the Harmony Accords, which only applies to signatory species, Minho countered smoothly. Commander Park and his crew never signed these accords. The chamber erupted into overlapping conversations and arguments. The High Arbiter, a towering draconid with crystalline growths along her skull, raised her ceremonial staff. The room fell silent. This council will recess to consider this unprecedented situation, she announced. Ambassador Song, convey to these humans that no action should be taken until our deliberations are complete. Minho bowed slightly. Of course, High Arbiter. But his eyes held a defiance never before seen in a human representative. Aboard the Leviathan, now hidden in the shadow of Proxima Centauri B's largest moon, Commander Juwu and his executive officer Sunmi Kang stood before a holographic display in the ship's strategic command center. The room had been sealed, with only the ship's AI permitted to monitor their conversation. Atlas, overlay current political boundaries with our weapons cache locations, Juwu requested. The ship's AI complied instantly. Analysis complete, Commander. The star map transformed, showing vast swaths of space colored according to political control. Small blinking points appeared throughout, dozens of them, scattered across multiple sectors. These are all still active? Sunny asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Affirmative. Atlas confirmed. Emergency Protocol Orpheus placed all supply caches in self-sustaining hibernation mode. 93% remain uncompromised according to their automated signals. The holographic display revealed a startling truth. The hidden arsenals from humanity's golden age remained undiscovered, scattered throughout what was now Concord space. Weapons platforms, shipyard facilities, ammunition dumps, and prototype research stations, all waiting for activation codes only the Leviathan could provide. "Sir," Sumi said quietly, "we could rebuild." Juwu studied the map silently, his face revealing nothing of the calculations happening behind his eyes. "At last, what is the status of Whisper network communications?" Whisper network nodes are intact but dormant. Activation would allow secure communication with all human settlements without Concord interception. And how many human settlements exist currently? Records indicate 47 recognized colonies and an estimated 63 unregistered human outposts. Atlas replied. Total human population outside Earth, approximately 12 million. Juwu nodded slowly. Enough to crew a fleet, if we had ships. We have potential shipyard facilities at 4 locations, Sumi pointed out, indicating blinking points on the map. If we could activate even one. The ship shuddered suddenly, cutting her off mid-sentence. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, red emergency lighting activating automatically. "Commander to bridge," came Do Yun's urgent voice over the comm system. "Multiple ships decloaking, bearing Concord markings but operating outside official channels." Juwu and Sumi raced through the corridors, crew members rushing to battle stations around them. When they reached the bridge, the main view screen showed 5 vessels surrounding the Leviathan. Unlike the diplomatic ship they had encountered previously, these were unmistakably military craft, angular, heavily armed, and positioned to prevent escape. "They're not broadcasting any identification," Hannah reported from her station, "and they don't match regular Concord military configurations." "Special operations," Do-hyun suggested grimly, "or deniable assets." "They're charging weapons," another officer announced, "targeting our propulsion systems." Juwu took his seat in the command chair, calm despite the chaos. "How did they find us?" "Unknown, sir," Sumi replied. "We maintained stealth protocols." "It doesn't matter now," Juwu decided. "Raise shields. Bring weapons systems to standby." The lead enemy vessel fired a warning shot that dissipated harmlessly against the Leviathan's shields. A communication request followed immediately. On screen, Juwu ordered. The Vexeri officer appeared, his scaled face set in what might have been a smile. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Concord space. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." "This is Commander Juwu Park of the HSS Leviathan. We are not subject to Concord jurisdiction. We request you withdraw immediately." The Vexeri officer hissed softly. "Your diplomatic representatives are being informed of your capture as we speak. This operation has been authorized at the highest levels. Resist, and we will disable your vessel." Juwu cut the communication with a gesture. "Options. We're outnumbered," Do-hyun stated bluntly. "But they're using standard Vexari attack formations. Nothing we haven't seen before." "And their technology?" Juwu asked. "Advanced in some areas," Hannah reported after scanning the enemy vessels. "But their weapons systems appear less sophisticated than expected, almost as if military technology has stagnated," Sumi finished, "or been deliberately limited by treaty." Juwu straightened his uniform and stood. "Power up defensive systems. Let's show them why the Leviathan was the pride of the human fleet." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, activating systems that had been dormant for centuries in the outside world. "Targeting solutions acquired," the weapons officer reported. "Waiting for your command, sir." "We don't want to start a war," Juwu said carefully. "Target their weapons and propulsion only. Disable, don't destroy." "Aye, Commander." The Leviathan's response was swift and devastating. Precision energy pulses struck each enemy vessel exactly where intended, disabling their primary weapons and engines with surgical precision. Before the Vexeri commander could process what had happened, his ship was drifting, auxiliary systems barely functioning. Enemy vessels neutralized, Doyon reported with barely concealed satisfaction. No casualties detected. Open a channel, Ju ordered. The Vexari commander appeared again, his earlier confidence replaced by poorly concealed shock. This was a demonstration, Ju explained calmly. We could have destroyed your vessels, but chose not to. Tell your superiors the Leviathan will not be seized or surrendered. We seek peaceful coexistence, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Without waiting for a response, Ju signaled for the communication to be cut. Set course for the outer system, he ordered. We need to rendezvous with Governor Taeyan's contact before more Concord forces arrive. As the Leviathan moved away from the disabled ships, leaving them for their allies to recover, Sunny approached Ju. Sir, the Whisper Network. Ju nodded, his expression resolute. Activated. It's time humanity remembered who we once were. The Leviathan drifted silently in the shadow of an ice moon, its massive hull nearly invisible against the darkness of space. 3 weeks had passed since their encounter with the Vexari ships. They had been moving constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be tracked. Inside the ship's data core, a chamber kept at near freezing temperatures to protect the quantum storage systems. Lieutenant Hannah Kim worked tirelessly. Her breath formed small clouds as she moved between terminals, reviewing data that had been locked away for centuries. There has to be more, she muttered, fingers flying across the interface. The final data package uploaded to the Leviathan before it was caught in the dimensional anomaly had been encrypted with the highest security protocols. Only now, with Atlas fully operational again, could they begin to access its contents. A sequence of numbers appeared on her screen, followed by a request for command authorization. Hannah immediately contacted the bridge. Commander, she called, her voice tight with anticipation. I've reached the final encryption layer of the transmission package from Earth Command. I need your authorization code. Minutes later, Ju entered the data core, nodding to Hannah as he approached her workstation. What have you found? I'm not sure yet, she admitted. But this level of encryption was reserved for only the most sensitive military intelligence. Ju entered his command code. The screen flickered, then began displaying information at a rapid pace. Tactical data, biological research, intercepted enemy communications. Atlas sorted through it all, organizing it into categories. This is, Hannah began, then fell silent as the implications became clear. Evidence. Ju finished for her, his face hardening as he read. Irrefutable evidence. The data revealed a devastating truth. Humanity's downfall had been orchestrated from the beginning. The Vexari, along with the Draconid and Alkari species, had engineered a bioweapon specifically designed to target human genetic markers. The weapon had been released simultaneously in Earth's major cities, causing a pandemic that crippled human defenses and created the perfect conditions for military intervention. They made it look like a natural disease outbreak, Hannah said in horror, then offered humanitarian aid that gave them access to our defense systems. And when Earth was weakened, Ju continued, they launched their attack, positioning themselves as reluctant warriors forced to contain a dangerous species. He straightened up, his decision made. We need to share this with Governor Taeyan immediately. 2 days later, in a secure underground bunker beneath the Proxima Centauri colony, Ju presented the evidence to Taeyan and her inner circle. As the data scrolled across the screens, Taeyan's expression changed from skepticism to cold fury. We suspected, she said, her voice low and controlled. For generations, there have been whispers, theories, but we had no proof. This changes everything. Among those present was Jia Wanyun, the colony's administrator for Concord relations. He listened intently, his face carefully neutral as Ju explained the implications. With this evidence, Ju concluded, we can appeal directly to the other species of the Concord. Many of them may not know the truth about how the Vexari, Draconid, and Alkari engineered humanity's fall. Or they know and don't care, Taeyan countered. power is a compelling reason to look the other way. We have the Leviathan, Ju reminded her. And soon, we'll have access to the old weapon caches and shipyards. For the first time in centuries, humanity has leverage. As the meeting concluded, Jawan slipped away quietly, making his way to a small apartment on the colony's outskirts. There, he activated a communication device hidden beneath the floorboards, Vexari technology that could transmit messages without being detected by standard human security systems. Urgent report, he whispered into the device. The humans from the Leviathan have discovered proof of Operation Cleansing Tide. They plan to broadcast it throughout Concord space. He paused, listening to the response from his handler. Yes, I understand the importance. The ship is currently in orbit around the moon. Defenses are at standard levels. I'm transmitting coordinates now. Aboard the Leviathan, Do-Yun was on the night shift, monitoring sensor readings when something caught his attention. A faint energy signature, barely detectable, but it was coming from the colony surface. Computer, analyze transmission, he ordered. Analysis complete, Atlas responded. Quantum encrypted burst transmission. Vexari military protocol detected. Do-Hyun immediately sounded the alert. Security breach. Wake the commander. But it was already too late. The bridge crew watched in horror as the space around Proxima Centauri rippled and distorted. 12 Concord warships materialized, their weapons systems already charging. Incoming fleet, Do-Hyun announced as the ships moved into attack formation. Concord military vessels. Heavy cruiser configuration. Ju rushed onto the bridge, quickly assessing the situation. Raise shields. Prepare defensive systems. Sir, Sunny reported, they've positioned themselves to cut off all conventional escape routes. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The face of a Vexari commander filled the screen. Human vessel Leviathan. By order of the Galactic Concord Security Council, you are to power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. Ju cut the transmission with a gesture. Options. We can fight, Do-Hyun suggested. Our weapons are superior, but there are 12 of them. Jump engines. Ju asked. Online. Sumi confirmed. But we need at least 2 minutes to charge the dimensional field. 2 minutes we don't have, Ju murmured. Then, more decisively, initiate jump sequence. All power to shields while we prepare. The Leviathan shuddered as the first volley of enemy fire struck their shields. Blue energy crackled across the hull as the defensive systems absorbed the impact. Shields holding at 87%. An officer reported. Jump sequence at 20%. Ju turned to Sumi. We can't let them stop us. The evidence we've uncovered needs to reach all human colonies. He made a sudden decision. Open a channel to all human settlements in range. Use the Whisper network. Sir, that will reveal the existence of the network to the Concord, Sumi warned. It doesn't matter now. They already know too much. Ju stepped forward, straightening his uniform. Record. The red light indicated he was being recorded. His message was brief but powerful. To all humans across the stars. This is Commander Ju Park of the HSS Leviathan. We have uncovered irrefutable proof that the fall of Earth was orchestrated by the Vexari, Draconid, and Alkari species. They engineered the pandemic that weakened us before their invasion. The truth about Earth's fall is now available to all through the Whisper network. The Leviathan lives, and so does humanity's freedom. Message transmitted. Sumi confirmed as another barrage rocked the ship. Shields at 62%. Jump sequence at 60%. Sir, Hana called urgently. I'm detecting a small transport leaving the colony surface. They're being targeted by Concord vessels. On the view screen, a battered transport ship weaved desperately between energy blasts, making a run for the Leviathan. They're transmitting an identification code, Hana continued. It's a resistance cell recognition code, dating back to the fall of Earth. Can we extend our shields to cover them? Ju asked. If they can get close enough, Do-hyun confirmed. Open a channel to that transport, Ju ordered. A woman's face appeared on screen. Fierce eyes and a scared face, her expression determined despite the chaos around her. This is Commander Ji-hai Choi of the Human Resistance, she announced without preamble. We've been fighting from the shadows for generations. Request immediate extraction. Commander Choi, Ju acknowledged. Bring your ship alongside our starboard docking bay. We'll extend shields to cover your approach. Jump sequence at 90%, Sumi reported as the transport maneuvered toward them. The next minutes were tense as the small ship dodged enemy fire, finally slipping beneath the Leviathan's protective shield bubble. Docking clamps secured it just as the jump engines reached full power. All stations secure for dimensional transition, Ju ordered. Execute jump now. The space around the Leviathan rippled and distorted. For a brief moment, the massive ship seemed to exist in two places at once. Then it vanished in a flash of energy, leaving the Concorde fleet firing into empty space. In the dimensional transition stream, Ju allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had the evidence. They had the ship. And now, they had allies who had been fighting from the shadows. The game had changed, and humanity was finally back on the board. The swirling purple and blue gases of the Andromeda cloud parted as the Leviathan emerged from its dimensional jump. The supercarrier sensors probed the seemingly empty region of space, searching for what the old records promised existed here. Anything? Ju asked, standing behind Hannah at her sensor station. Nothing yet, sir, she replied, adjusting the scanning parameters. If something is here, it's well hidden. Commander Ji-hai Choi, leader of the resistance fighters they had rescued, stepped forward. Her face still bore the scars of decades fighting against Concorde oppression. The coordinates are correct, she insisted. My grandfather passed down stories about this place. Shipyard Prometheus, humanity's last hope, hidden when Earth fell. Ju nodded. Atlas, transmit the recognition sequence on the old military channels. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, like a ghost materializing from nothing, a massive structure began to appear as camouflage fields deactivated. Layer by layer, the shipyard revealed itself, a sprawling facility larger than a small moon, its curved arms extending outward like a metallic flower opening to the stars. It's magnificent, Sumi whispered. Do-hyun's voice was tight with emotion. I never thought I'd see it. Prometheus was just a rumor, even among high command. The Leviathan approached slowly, docking beacons activating automatically as they neared. Massive doors slid open, revealing a docking bay large enough to accommodate the supercarrier with room to spare. Take us in, Ju ordered. As the Leviathan entered the shipyard, emergency lighting flickered to life along corridors that had seen no human presence for centuries. Automated systems, dormant but not dead, began their startup sequences. A boarding party led by Ju and Jivi made their way to the shipyard's control center. Dust covered every surface, but otherwise, the facility appeared perfectly preserved, frozen in time. The shipyard was designed to wait, Ju explained as they walked. Emergency protocols would have placed it in hibernation mode when Earth fell, conserving power and maintaining essential systems until a proper authorization code was received. In the control center, Sumi approached the main console. Her fingers hesitated over the ancient controls before she entered her command codes. Screens lit up around them, displaying status reports and inventory lists. Production capacity at 40% and rising, she reported as massive fabrication arms began to glow with renewed energy throughout the facility. Material reserves are intact. According to these readings, Prometheus can begin construction immediately. How many ships? Jai asked. Sumni reviewed the data. At full capacity, 1 light cruiser every 2 weeks, smaller vessels faster. Ju smiled for the first time since they'd escaped Proxima Centauri. Then we begin now. Atlas, upload the designs for the Phoenix-class vessels we discussed. Over the next 3 months, Prometheus came fully alive. A shipyard hummed with activity as automated systems constructed the first new human warships in centuries. Meanwhile, the evidence of the Concorde's treachery spread through the Whisper network to every human colony. The response was more powerful than anyone had anticipated. Not just humans rose up. Other species who had suffered under Concorde rule joined them. The Telarians, the Nomardi, and the Canthi, all species who had been subjugated through similar means, declared their independence after learning the truth. The Concorde Council is in chaos, Hannah reported one morning, reviewing intelligence from their growing network of allies. 3 council members have been removed for their part in the conspiracy. Others are calling for negotiation with us. But the Vexari would not surrender their power so easily. They had assembled a massive fleet at the Carina Gateway, the strategic jump gate that controlled access to a quarter of the galaxy's trade routes. If we control that gateway, Jihai explained during a strategy session, we control who enters this sector. It would give us time to build our strength and force the Concorde to negotiate on equal terms. Ju added. The plan was set. The Leviathan, now accompanied by 6 newly constructed vessels crewed by colonists and rebels, approached the Carina Gateway. On the other side waited the Concorde Armada, 30 warships arranged in battle formation. On the Leviathan's bridge, tension hung in the air. Many of the station officers were new, colonists trained by Juu's original crew. They were nervous but determined, the children of those who had lived under Concorde oppression for generations. They're hailing us, Hannah announced. The face of a Draconid admiral appeared on screen. Human vessels. This is your final warning. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. They're demanding our surrender, Hannah reported unnecessarily, closing the channel. Juu exchanged glances with Jihai. Now his tactical officer. Send our response. But instead of words, Juu gave a different order. Target the gateway's control node. Single shot. Maximum precision. The weapons officer nodded, entering the targeting parameters. The Leviathan's main cannon charged, gathering energy that illuminated the space around the ship. The Concorde vessels prepared to intercept what they assumed would be an attack on their fleet. But when the cannon fired, the brilliant beam of energy shot past the enemy ships, striking the jump gate's central control hub with surgical precision. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient jump gate began to pulse with blue light, its control systems reconfigured under the specialized code embedded in the Leviathan's attack. Jump gate protocols overridden, Sumi confirmed. Concorde authorization codes locked out. Only our ships can pass through now. Juu opened a channel to the enemy fleet. His voice was calm but firm as he delivered his message. This region of space is now under protection of the Human Restoration Fleet, he broadcast. We have no desire for war, but we will no longer accept subjugation. The evidence of your crimes against humanity has been shared with all species in the Concorde. We offer you a choice. Retreat and negotiate, or continue a fight you cannot win. For several tense minutes, the Concorde fleet held position. Then, one by one, they began to turn away. They're withdrawing, Doyen reported, disbelief in his voice, all vessels returning to Concorde space. A cheer erupted across the bridge. It was not total victory, but it was the beginning of one. 3 months later, Juu stood on the observation deck of shipyard Prometheus. Below him, the construction bays were fully operational, building a dozen new ships simultaneously. Each vessel bore the insignia of restored humanity, a phoenix rising above Earth's silhouette. Heavy footsteps announced Sumi's arrival. She joined him at the viewport, watching the activity below. The Telarian delegation has arrived, she informed him. They're ready to sign the alliance treaty. The Nomari and Canthi representatives are already on board. Juu nodded, his eyes still fixed on the ships under construction. Beyond them, through the massive doors of the shipyard, he could see the fleet they had already assembled, 30 vessels of various sizes, all crewed by humans and their allies. Governor Tayan sent a message, Sumi continued. The liberation of the Proxima Centauri colony was successful. 3 more colonies have overthrown their Vexari administrators. And Earth? Ju asked quietly. Still under quarantine, but our intelligence suggests the blockade is weakening. With the Concord divided, maintaining it has become difficult. Ju finally turned from the viewport, his face resolute. Then our next target is clear. It's time to go home. He smiled. The fleet will be ready in 2 weeks. Ju looked back at the ship one final time, pride evident in his expression. We were forgotten, he said to Sumi as she stood beside him. But now they'll remember. In the darkness of space beyond the shipyard, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if bearing witness to humanity's return. The forgotten supercarrier had not just reemerged, it had awakened a fire that would spread across the galaxy, reclaiming what had been lost and forging a new future from the ashes of betrayal. The end.